Why is optimal blood flow so important when it comes to health? Well, think about a city like my favorite city, Bikini Bottom. If we stop delivering plumbing, electricity to one area, that area starts to decay and die off. Your body is the same way. If you can't deliver oxygen and nutrients to part of your body, then these tissues start to suffer. And this is especially true when it comes to your brain. The joints take longer to recover, memories start to fade, and it starts to feel like you're getting old. Even if you're young and healthy, good blood flow means preventing disease and optimizing recovery for sports or athletics. And for my fellow men, better blood flow also means more warnings spent in the woods. In this video, we're gonna get into how to improve blood flow, why and how high blood pressure occurs, causes damage, and most importantly, how it's connected to diet and how you can improve your health. If you were to do a heavy leg press, your blood pressure may reach values of 320 over 250 milligrams of mercury. So why are we so concerned if your blood pressure is a bit higher than 120 over 80? Why is high blood pressure so concerning, and what can we do about it? In our bodies, we have vessels carrying blood, and these blood cells are negatively charged because celiac acids are sticking out of them. They're like magnets. The negative charges repel each other. This is known as the zeta potential. Because they repel one another, they don't stick. If they were to stick, well, all your blood will clot together and we die. But when all is well, these cells don't stick and hence blood flows well and it's easy for the heart to pump. But just when you think all is good, there's some compounds that are positively charged that gets our cells sticking together. When this happens, now our blood is starting to thicken, becoming sludgy, meaning now your heart has to work harder to pump these cells. Thus, blood pressure goes up. The way blood flows in the body is that it takes different roads to get to the arm or to the neck. But unlike car, there's no driver. So some of these cells are just hitting these branching points. They're hitting these walls over and over again. And this is always happening. But when it happens at a higher pressure, well, now more damage is being done and our body can't keep up with these injuries, meaning that plaque starts to build up and now your arteries are also starting to narrow, which also increases blood pressure, like squeezing a hose. And this is increasing peripheral resistance. This is why high blood pressure is such a major risk factor for cardiovascular disease. This plaque buildup can dislodge, leading to a stroke or leading to a heart attack, which is why your family doctor is so worried about it. So what causes our blood to stick together? So what's positively charged? Well, a major molecule that's positively charged is, drumroll please, LDL cholesterol. And this is the quote-unquote bad cholesterol your family doctor is worried about. LDL gets your blood cells sticking together, meaning our heart has to work harder and blood pressure goes up. So, how can you lower your LDL cholesterol? LDL's job is to transport fat, so eating less fat is one way to naturally lower blood pressure. But I'd be lying to you if that's all there is to do for blood pressure. There's actually more pieces at play for blood pressure. Look at your sodium to potassium ratio. Most people know how salt retains fluid, thus more fluid raises blood pressure, more water in the hose means there's higher pressure, but it also inhibits endothelial, meaning blood vessel cells, nitric oxide synthase. Nitric oxide is a vasodilator, meaning relaxes the blood vessels, thus lowering blood pressure. Potassium as well as magnesium helps to vasodilate. And what foods are rich in those two and lower in sodium? Vegetables are. But they're not only lower in sodium, they also have nitrates that convert to nitric oxide. And again, nitric oxide vasodilates our blood vessels, thus lowering blood pressure. And later in this video, I'll get into how you can lower blood pressure. But first, is high blood pressure always a bad thing? It turns out when blood cells start sticking together, they're not going to be flexible enough to get into our smallest blood vessels. Thus, pressure increases to force these cells through. But what if you were to artificially lower this blood pressure? For example, through taking medication. Well, then you may compromise blood flow to parts of your body. And this is especially important when it comes to your brain, because once those cells don't get enough blood, in other words oxygen, well, they start to die off. If your blood pressure is even slightly elevated, then over time you speed up the wear down of your elastin in your arteries. And because we don't build new elastin when we're adults, this means your arteries get stiffer, as in our arteries start to calcify. And your blood pressure may now always sit a little higher. I shared how high blood pressure can lead to a heart attack or stroke, and overall how dangerous it is. But what if you're eating a healthy diet and your arteries are clear? Well, then you may not want to artificially lower this pressure. If your body has some damage from less than stellar eating habits, but always okay right now, then lowering that blood pressure may actually be harmful in the long run as you're impairing blood flow. So there's a cost benefit to lowering blood pressure through medication that you need to know about. On one hand, for the vast majority of people, you may prevent further damage and potentially prevent a heart attack or stroke. That's huge. But for a select few who simply have some elevated BP, either through bad genetics or arteries compensating for loss of elastin tissue, well, then you may actually be setting the stage for vascular dementia. So, is high blood pressure always a bad thing? No, of course not, but it's a complicated picture of risk management, and the first step is to improve your diet as much as you can and then run your new analysis. Alright, let's get into the dietary changes to lower your blood pressure, to lower your cholesterol, and to live a healthy, long life. Here's what to eat to lower your LDL, your bad cholesterol. Because LDL's job is to transfer fat, you need to lower the amount of fat in your diet. So start with the foods that are highest in fat in your diet so you can get the biggest bang for your buck. And what food is that? It's oil. Oil is pure fat, but I have good news. You can saute, bake, air fry, all without oil. To learn how, Google how to saute without oil. You can add Bain's Nutrition to your search to find my video on it. Even getting rid of just 1 tablespoon of oil would mean 120 less calories coming in every single day, and that adds up to more than 800 calories over a week. If I were to give you a tablespoon of oil to drink, it doesn't do a whole lot to fill you up, but that's more calories than a pound of some vegetables. If you want to take it a step further, next up is butter, then nuts and seeds, and then chocolate. I know, not delicious chocolate, but just wait, because after that is most junk foods, then cheese, followed by that is some meats, and finally avocado. Now, rather than being a complete negative Nancy about this and getting rid of everything, instead look at ways to increase the intake of foods that are lower in fat and stay full on those. Fruits and vegetables, lentils, most beans and peas, and especially the starchy foods to satisfy that hunger. If you increase these, master how to cook without oil, then congrats, you're on the path to better health. But high fat intake isn't the only thing causing your high blood pressure, so the next steps is to improve your sodium to potassium ratio. The easiest way to do this would be to use a salt substitute, so potassium chloride instead of sodium chloride. Sodium chloride is table salt. You don't want to replace all the table salt, but maybe 1/4 of it is now potassium, that's salt substitute, and 3/4 of it is regular table salt. And then maybe go 50-50 and see how your food tastes. You could also add salt on top of your food after cooking. This way, more salt hits your tongue and you can use less overall. But the best way is to simply eat more whole plant foods that have higher ratios of potassium to sodium. The best foods are sweet potatoes and lentils, but even celery, that's considered a high sodium vegetable, has 3 times as much potassium to sodium. Whole plant foods like greens and beets also have nitrates that convert to nitric oxide, and yep, you guessed it, vasodilate. To my fellow dudes, eating beets, which are very high in those nitrates, means vasodilations, means more tents popping up, and more beating that you know. Beets to beat it. The beet industry should really hire me for marketing at this point. I hope you enjoyed this video. Catch you on the next one.